Hello dear viewers and welcome to a new episode of Nile TV Newsroom Live. I'm Mohammed Abdelwaheb. Today we have a number of different segments. First we'll be starting with the political segment as always, then we'll take a closer look at the business and finance. We'll also have stories about the interesting worlds of technology and arts, and our final segment will be sports. So stay tuned for all of that and much more. First, a short break, and then we will begin with our political segments. And starting with the highlight of the week. President Abdel Fattah AlSissi said that the 23rd of July revolution marked the establishment of the First Republic 71 years ago, and thus continued the path to build a new Egypt and became an inspiration from freedom movements worldwide. Marking the event, AlSissi said Egyptians have the right to be proud of what has been achieved throughout the Egyptian modern history since independence. He said the national path will continue despite hardships and challenges. AlSissi said the new republic shares the same foundations and values and builds upon them rather than replaces them. He said such values prioritize the protection of the nation amid regional and international status that is unprecedentedly growing, complicated, besides the need to unify the local front. He said the new republic seeks to provide equal job opportunities and decent life for the current and upcoming generations and to build the national capabilities in all fields. And President AlSissi on Monday held a meeting with Justice Minister Omar Marwan. The official presidential spokesman said the president was briefed on ongoing efforts to upgrade technological and artificial intelligence aspects at courts, as well as links established between judicial bodies and authorities. As part of a comprehensive upgrade process, the judicial systems in the Egyptian state, the minister reviewed extensive efforts made to apply the most modern technological means in order to help speed up judicial cases handling at courts. The Palestinian Health Ministry announced the death of 3 young men killed by Israeli occupation shots at the Jebel Gerizim gate in Nablus, north of the West Bank. Eyewitnesses said the occupation troops prevented ambulances from reaching the site where the shooting took place and later refused to hand their bodies and took their car into custody. The occupation forces had earlier blocked the area to medical staff and journalists and closed off the iron gate at the entrance to the area to prevent inhabitants from entering and exiting it. And Palestinian presidency spokesman Nabil Abu Urdaina said the assassination of the 3 Palestinian youth by occupation forces in Nablus was a war crime. Abu Urdaina said the action is a continuation of the collective punishment policy the Palestinian people are exposed to. He said daily killings of Palestinians and the storming of Palestinian villages and infringements on Islamic and Christian holy sites and other crimes will not crush the Palestinian people. He said the only path to achieve peace and security is to return to the Palestinian people their rights endorsed by international legitimacy. He also called for swift action by the US to stop the latest Israeli aggression. Israeli occupation troops, in the meantime, detained 3 Palestinians in occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds. 2 of them were taken into custody after storming their home in search operations in the Old City, while the 3rd was taken by the occupation troops from Anata. The occupation authorities also forced the Palestinian to demolish his own home, housing 5 family members in Beit Hanina in occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds. And scores of Israeli occupation settlers stormed into the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the Al-Maghariba Gate under heavy occupation police protection. The settlers practiced Talmudic rituals and carried out provocative rounds. And Russia said Tuesday it had repelled a drone attack overnight on a military patrol boat in the Black Sea, where tensions have been building after Moscow exited a deal protecting Ukrainian grain exports. The Russian Defense Ministry said Ukraine's armed forces carried out an unsuccessful attack overnight with 2 naval drones on the Sergei Kotov patrol ship. It said they used conventional weapons on board to destroy the approaching drones at a distance of about 1 kilometer. It added that no one was injured and the vessel is continuing its mission. On the other side, Russia launched new drone strikes on Kiev and parts of central and northern Ukraine early on Tuesday, but there were no immediate reports of damage or casualties. There were also no reports of new attacks on southern Ukraine. Head of the Kiev military administration said Russia used Iranian-made Shahid drones to attack Kiev for the 6th time this month, but all were shot down. And the Kremlin said on Tuesday that it was impossible for Russia to return to the Black Sea grain export deal for now, as an agreement related to Russian interests was not being implemented. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters, however, that President Vladimir Putin had made it clear that the deal could be revived if the Russia-focused part of the agreement was honored. The deal brokered by the United Nations and Turkey last July aimed to help prevent a global food crisis by allowing grain blocked by the conflict in the Ukraine to be safely exported. Peskov said it would be important for Russia to discuss grain supplies with African countries at a Russia-Africa summit later this week. Operators carrying out maintenance at Ukraine's Zaporizia nuclear plant have switched the shutdown mode of 2 reactors, according to the Moscow-installed administration of the plant. One of the plant's 6 reactors, according to the IAEA, needs to be kept in a hot shutdown mode in order to produce steam required for nuclear safety, including the processing of liquid radioactive waste in storage tanks. The administration said in order to conduct a scheduled technical inspection of the equipment of power unit number 5, the management of the Zaporizia nuclear plant decided to transfer it to the cold shutdown. The IAEA said in a statement on Monday that the plant administration had informed the agency about the transition. The IAEA said in the statement that the other units remain in cold shutdown. Moscow says the plant will eventually be connected to Russia's power grid. None of the plant's 6 reactors has been producing electricity. Ukraine has vowed to retake the plant and all land in the Ukraine that is now occupied by Moscow. And a third successive heat wave in Greece pushed temperatures back above 40 degrees Celsius across parts of the country, following more nighttime evacuations from fires that have raged out of control for days. The latest evacuation orders were issued on the islands of Corfu and Evia. A blaze on the island of Rhodes continued to move inland on Tuesday. The details in this report.
Greece braced for a new wave of soaring temperatures on Tuesday as wildfires raged on several popular tourist islands, forcing mass evacuations in the capital city of Athens. The mercury is expected to soar to 41 degrees Celsius and reach up to 44 degrees Celsius in central Greece. Many regions of the country were on red alert, meaning there is an extreme risk of dangerous forest fires exacerbated by strong winds. The very hot weather comes after a weekend of intense heat as thousands of locals and tourists fled the forest fires on the Greek islands of Rhodes and Corfu. With the Prime Minister warning the heat-battered nation is at war with the flames, authorities evacuated nearly 2,500 people from the Greek island of Corfu on Monday, after tens of thousands of people had already fled blazes on the island of Rhodes, with many frightened tourists scrambling to get home on evacuation flights. More than 265 fighters were still battling flames for an eighth consecutive day on Rhodes, supported by 2 helicopters and 2 planes. Fires were also raging on Greece's second-largest island of Evia, where Greek civil protection authorities issued an overnight evacuation order in one northern locality. The mercury hit 46.4 degrees Celsius in Gaethio on Sunday, though failed to reach the hottest temperature nationally on record of 48 degrees Celsius. The severe heat wave in Greece has also been reflected across much of southern Europe and northern Africa. In Algeria, at least 34 people have died as wildfires raged through residential areas, forcing mass evacuations. In southeastern France, officials Monday issued a fire warning at the highest level, warning that the weather conditions make the risk of flames very high compared to normal summers. The exceptional temperatures in Greece have forced key tourist sites such as the Acropolis in Athens to close at the hottest times of the day. The fires are particularly devastating on very touristic islands such as Rhodes and Corfu, where the season is in full swing and hotels are often full. Volunteers had come to the aid of foreign tourists in the north of the island, where nearly 200 people are still camped out at school after being evacuated from the fires. Scientists from the World Weather Attribution Group said Tuesday that the heat waves that have hit parts of Europe and North America this month would have been almost impossible without human-caused climate change.
And we have with us now over the phone Dr. Ayman Abdelwaheb, international climate expert. A very good evening to you, Dr. Abdelwaheb, and thank you for joining us. And sir,
with me tonight.
Parts of Europe and North Africa are witnessing unprecedented temperature hikes over the last couple of weeks, and topping them off are the latest fires in Greece, what also happened in Algeria, and we're feeling in Egypt now the hottest July ever, perhaps. So how do you see this?
Well, actually, these heat waves we are experiencing now, it's not unexpected, you know. It has been forecasted a few decades ago, and scientists have been talking about the climate change, about the global warming, and about the severe consequences of climate change. And actually, we are not talking now about global warming, but we are talking about climate change. We are talking about severe weather conditions, and we are currently witnessing the worst heat wave ever. That it's covering areas of Europe, France. We are talking about France. We're talking about Canada. We're talking about Greece. These places have never experienced this high temperatures. And just we have to know that these fires, 85% of these fires are man-made. So again, humans caused the global warming, and humans caused the climate change, and again they are causing these wildfires. This is due to negligence, due to malfunctioning of some equipment, due to campfires that are not put off after use. So we are destroying our planet. This is very serious, and scientists have been talking about that. But it seems that people are living in another planet. They never listen. And to be honest with you, this is not an individual effort that will overcome what we are experiencing. This has to be dealt with globally, because we're talking about a global crisis, and it has to be dealt globally. And to be honest with you, it's not easy. It's not simple. We're talking about industrial countries that are embracing a very high standard of living, and they don't want to let go. So something has to be taken immediately, because now we are reaching the non-return points of damaging our planet. We are in a very dangerous zone now.
Yes, Dr. Abdelwaheb, so what is it exactly that you want to see from the international community? Because everybody is suffering. We used to say, you know, that the developed countries are suffering more, or perhaps those in Africa are suffering more because of the general topography of African lands and the weather conditions close to the equator. But as we see it, I mean, everybody is paying the price. So what is it that you want to see from the international community, and specifically to assist the poorer or less developed countries face the consequences?
Well, actually, I don't want to be sound pessimistic, but it's a very complex issue. And what we're talking about, it's a mixture between environment, politics, economics, and sociology. So we are talking about a very complex issue. And if something to happen in the right direction, all nations have to embrace a very conservative policy regarding conservation of resources, about using what they really need, because countries like Europe, like North America, they are using more than they need. They are exploiting the natural resources more than we should. Actually, some studies have mentioned that the current situation, that we are using 2.5 Earths. What we are consuming is 2.5 Earths. So there is no sustainability of our style of living right now. To answer your question, what I'm requesting from the international community is that everybody has to sit together. It's a state of emergency. A state of emergency should be declared, because some studies say that planet Earth is a dying planet. So we're talking about the human race. The human race is in danger. People are dying from fires. People are dying from heat strokes. People are dying from hunger in Africa. So this is what has to happen right now. A state of emergency, all the nations have to sit together. They should embrace a policy that conserve resources, stop using the fossil fuel, use the natural, renewable and clean energy, and stop this nonsense of, living in luxury while, the planet is dying. As simple as that.
All right. Dr. Ayman Abdelwaheb, climate expert, thank you very much for your time and your insights, sir. Please stay with us, dear viewers. We'll be back with more here on Nile TV Newsroom Live. After this, the business and economy segment will come your way. Welcome back. Europe's main stock markets opened mixed Tuesday as traders reacted to corporate earnings and awaited key interest rate decisions later in the week. London's benchmark FTSE 100 index gained 0.1%. In the Eurozone, Frankfurt's DAX index dipped 0.2% and the Paris CAC 40 rose 0.1%. Global shares rose on Tuesday, lifted by a rally in Asia, where the yuan bounced after China pledged to step up support for its sputtering economy, while evidence of a slowdown in European growth dented the euro. The MSCI All World Index rose 0.2%, boosted by gains in the Chinese stock market, where the mainland index rose 1.9% and Hong Kong stocks rose 3%, thanks to a surge in property stocks that had been diving on debt repayment worries. But the positive momentum did not carry over into Europe, where stocks and the euro struggled to remain in positive territory, and concern about recession resurfaced after regional surveys the days before showed business activity shrunk far more than expected in July. Europe's stock 600 edged up 0.2% on the day, led in part by shares in mining companies, which rallied after China's signal that it intends to prop up the economy. In currencies, the Chinese yuan rose 0.7% against the dollar to 7.1386 after the stimulus measures, helped by state banks selling dollars onshore and offshore in Asia. The dollar index, which measures the performance of the US currency against 6 others, eased 0.1%. The Australian dollar, which serves as a liquid proxy to the yuan, rose 0.5%, while the euro struggled to pull above 2-week lows. It was last up 0.1%. The Japanese yen edged higher against the dollar, which fell 0.2%. The UN chief on Monday urged Russia to resume the internationally brokered deal so that grain can be shipped from Ukraine's Black Sea ports, saying that otherwise the world's most vulnerable among the hungry will suffer the worst consequences. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres made the appeal during a speech in Rome at the opening of a 3-day food summit. With the recent collapse of the Ukraine-Russia grain deal, Guterres said the most vulnerable will pay the highest price. Wheat prices have risen more than 14% since Monday, when Russia pulled out of the grain deal, and corn prices are up more than 10%. Both Russia and the Ukraine are essential to global food security, the UN chief said. He noted that they have historically accounted for 30% of global wheat and barley exports, a fifth of all maize and more than half of all sunflower oil. Russia's refusal to renew the accord triggered the deal's collapse earlier this month. It said the Black Sea Initiative would be suspended. Russia has, over the past several years, strengthened its presence in Africa, vowing to intensify grain exports, weapons deliveries, and energy cooperation. The Black Continent is gaining importance for Russia, which has been isolated from Europe and the United States since launching its offensive in the Ukraine in February of last year. More in this report.
Russia hosts African leaders this week for a summit aimed at boosting ties despite concerns in Africa over the conflict in Ukraine and the suspension of a deal on Ukrainian grain exports. Isolated on the international scene since launching the military campaign in Ukraine, President Putin still has support in several African countries. At the summit in St. Petersburg, President Vladimir Putin's native city, several African leaders are expected including South African President Ramaphosa. The summit is the second of its kind after an inaugural one that was held in 2019 in Sochi in southern Russia. The end of a deal that has allowed Ukrainian grain exports through the Black Sea to global markets, including Africa, is set to dominate the agenda. Russia pulled out of the deal earlier this month, saying a promise to allow Russian exports had not been honored. Over a year, the deal allowed around 33 million tons of grain to leave Ukrainian ports, helping to stabilize the global food prices and avert shortages. In the last few days, Moscow has sought to reassure African partners, saying it understands their concern on the issue. The Kremlin has said that without any doubt it is ready to export grain for free to African countries that need it. Putin has said Moscow could return to the agreement, but only if the part of the deal allowing Russian grain and fertilizer is fully implemented. African leaders have for their part sought a higher profile role in the diplomacy around the conflict in Ukraine. Delegation of African leaders visited Moscow and Kiev last month to urge both sides to cease hostilities, but the initiative had little effect. The summit in St. Petersburg comes a month ahead of a summit of leaders of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, which is due to take place in Johannesburg. South Africa has said Putin, who is the subject of an international arrest warrant for his actions in Ukraine, will not be attending in person.
And with us now over the phone is Ambassador Suad Chalabi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good evening to you, Ambassador.
Good evening, Hani.
Thank you for joining us. And let me first ask you, Russia is hosting African leaders this week for a summit aimed at boosting ties. How do you weigh the timing of the summit, especially after the suspension of the deal on Ukrainian grain exports?
This is a very critical time to host the summit, whether it is from the Russian side or from the African side, because Africa is also suffering from the war in Sudan and also other conflicts in Africa. Russia is, of course, suffering from the casualties in the Ukrainian war, and because of the food security and the energy security. And as you know, that Russia stopped the grain deal that was supposed to provide the African countries with the grain, and now it is committed and obliged. Putin has declared that Russia is obliged to show its commitment to the continent of Africa by offering another trade deal for the grain,
Yes.
and hopefully it will solve the crisis of the food crisis and the grain fertilizers crisis that was
Hopefully indeed.
suffering, that had the countries of Africa suffer during the past year.
Hopefully indeed. Now a number of conferences and events bringing together Russia and African states have been held in recent years. How have these events contributed to the well-being of African economies, and how optimistic are you that in the future we will see this cooperation continuing?
Well, I don't see, I'm not so optimistic because, of course, the war is still going on. There are lots of sanctions on Russia. Russia is looking for partners and for allies during this period, and that is why it is hosting this summit. And it wants to depend on the voting power of the African countries in the General Assembly and in the United Nations. But in general, it is very difficult for a country that is in war to provide a trade, for instance, to double the trade that was promised in 2019 in the previous summit. it cannot do this, of course. It has been the same amount of trade since the 2019 until now. So hopefully the Green Deal could happen, but it is not sure that Russia will be able to continue to help African countries. They are, of course, in need of many things. They are in need of technology, information technology, nuclear energy, and they are even trying to forge a deal between Ukraine and Russia. Last year, the 4 leaders went to Ukraine and Russia, but unfortunately, even with the help of the EU, they were not able to mediate the peace agreement. That is why I'm not optimistic, especially that also they will discuss Wagner interference in Mali and in Sudan, South Sudan and Sudan. And this mercenary group is recruited in these countries in exchange for the natural resources like gold and uranium. So it is, and even after what happened between Wagner and Russia, the rebellion that was against Russia, Wagner still holds its position and its situation in African countries. So this is going to be one of the agenda items that will be discussed during the summit in St. Petersburg.
A very important summit indeed. Thank you very much, Ambassador Suad Chalabi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you for your rich input. And continuing now with our Panorama Newsroom live segments, and we now go to the technology segment of the program. Elon Musk and Twitter Chief Executive Officer Linda Yaccarino unveiled a logo for the social media platform on Monday that featured a white X on a black background as a replacement for the familiar blue bird symbol. Both Yaccarino and Musk's Twitter handles feature the X logo, although the Twitter bluebird is still visible across the platform. Goodbye Twitter was trending on the platform with reference to the old logo, as some users criticized the new one. Musk said on a post he wanted to change Twitter's logo and polled his millions of followers on whether they would favor changing the site's color scheme from blue to black. In response to a tweet asking what will tweets be called under X, Musk replied, The original Twitter logo was designed in 2012 by a team of 3. Musk had co-founded X.com as an online bank in 1999, which later transformed into PayPal, while Twitter's official page on the platform has been renamed as X. The domain X.com is not active. Yaccarino is the former advertising chief at NBC Universal, who started as Twitter CEO on June 5th, has taken over when the social media platform is trying to reverse a plunge in advertising revenue. Since the takeover of Twitter, the company has faced tumultuous times with layoffs, a sharp drop in advertisers, and the meteoric rise of Threads, Meta's response to Twitter. And finally, with sports and Messi. As World Cup winner, Messi will be the new captain of Inter Miami. The Major League Soccer MLS side's coach Tata Martino confirmed on Monday. Messi, who signed for Miami earlier this month, wore the captain's armband on his debut for the club in a Leagues Cup tie against Liga MX's Cruz Azul on Friday, in which the Argentine forward scored a stoppage time free kick. The club's previous captain was Brazilian midfielder Gregore, who is facing a lengthy spell on the sidelines due to a foot injury. Inter Miami close out the two-game group stage on Tuesday when they host Atlanta United, with hopes of advancing to the knockout stages of the League's Cup, which is a World Cup-style tournament featuring all teams from MLS and Mexico's Liga MX. The trademark there. Well, that is it, dear viewers, for Nile TV's Newsroom Live edition for this week. Next week, same time, inshallah, is a new episode. Until then, this is Muhammad Abdelrahim. Thanking you for watching.